Welcome back to Being the Head, the human cost of leading schools. I'm Jacqui LaMaitre.
And I'm Jane, and we're here to speak the truth about the visible weight of school leadership and how building a trusted tribe around you can change everything. And we hope that you've had a great first week back at school after the summer holidays.
Yeah, and a lovely summer. So welcome back, everybody. Today's episode is why building your network isn't an option, it's essential. Let's dive in.
Okay, headlines from the head. So what does the latest data tell us about the emotional toll of leadership? Well, according to Education Support, 65% of school leaders have experienced a decline in their mental health. Leaders reported even higher levels of emotional fatigue, with many balancing leadership with caring responsibilities or simply being expected to absorb it all. And that's something that both Jacqui and I have experienced.
Oh, definitely. And from the DFE, Working Lives of Teachers and Leaders study, over 40% of leaders say they didn't feel they had anyone to talk to at work about how they really felt. That figure is even higher for women in isolated or small school roles. I have lots, and Jane has lots of experience of small schools. McKinsey's 2023 leadership research found that leaders with strong peer networks were 33% more likely to report job satisfaction and resilience. So why have we got such a disconnect?
Actually, Jacqui, it's to do with culture. There is a culture of just get on with it. And vulnerability is sort of misunderstood and misconstrued as being a weakness. And it's that mindset which is so outdated and is causing the damage, because I think too many of us are expected to lead like machines, and we're not. We're human beings with emotions and feelings.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. I think this is a massive thing about the vulnerability. I know we've talked about, how you feel when you go to meetings and you don't want to open up and talk about anything because it's that fear of failure, isn't it? And being with peers and being with peers that you think are going to know much more than you are, especially when you're in a new head, and not wanting to show any sign of weakness. Actually, weakness is a good thing to have, in the fact that, you really would love to have that open and be able to say, you know what, I am not coping with this. And I think the strength of when we get heads together, when we do briefings, is that networking and having those people together in the same room and having a trusted element within that same room as well. Yeah.
It's that feeling of being judged, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, the classroom crisis. So what's it look like when leaders don't have anyone to turn to?
Okay, then, Jane, can you share a time when the absence of a trusted team really showed up in a crisis? Have you ever thought about that?
Share a time when the absence of a trusted team. Yeah, I can actually. I think my most recent illness was quite apparent, and I think the phrase "actions speak louder than words" was
Yeah, definitely.
absolutely evident. I hit quite a sort of I hit a low point actually. I was stressed, extremely stressed, and I hit burnout, which resulted in counseling and medication and a lot of reflection and changes, quite significant changes to how I was gaining that work-life balance, which has taken a lot of effort on my part, but I'm a lot better than what I was. But what I really missed was the team that I worked with actually authentically reaching out to me to check to see how I was doing, apart from the weekly mandatory phone call from HR, which, the lady that was doing it was really lovely, but it wasn't the team that I was used to working with. There was one other person that reached out weekly. How are you? And it was genuine. The rest of my team was at the start, a real cursory, you know where I am if you need to speak to me. Hope you're okay. Well, I'm not okay. I wasn't okay. You know, I'd not have any time off, but it was just so, it was a tick box for them. And I think that that sort of had an impact on on the relationship, that working relationship. Um,
Did you have that, I always think that occupational report, you know, the schools
oh,
have to
no.
cost some, yeah, that costs an absolute fortune that you get. I remember doing that, you know, many, many moons ago. And I'd just been diagnosed with something or other, some illness, something. And they'd sent me off to this occupational health, and it came back and she just went, yeah, you're stressed. And you didn't get anything. And I went, yeah, I know I'm stressed. Is there somebody I can talk to about how I could like manage this, or some sort of adaptation into what I was doing? But to just get told you're stressed, and I'm thinking, no, whatever, Sherlock, I know I'm stressed. I need somebody to acknowledge that this job is, and somebody who's higher up than me to say, yeah, we realize this is really tough, what you're doing at the moment. You're probably doing 80 plus hours. And this is some strategies to cut you down. And actually, we'll take this off you and this off you and this off you. And we won't hold you to account for this. And, you know, you don't have to attend so many meetings in the evenings. Because I think what people don't realize is, I mean, when I first became an exec head, we amalgamated 3 schools together. We didn't amalgamate the flipping
Body?
meetings,
No.
and it didn't amalgamate the afternoon. There was still 3 fates. There was still 3 this, 3 that, 3 sports days, 3. There was still all that extra over above 3 times, but nobody said actually. And I suppose looking back at it, you could be more strategic had you thought about it and done more about it yourself. But you need that
Yeah.
recognition, don't you, from
You
above?
think, no, you feel guilty because you think, well, if I don't go there, then it'll get reported back and they'll think that I don't care. And it's, but people, unless they've walked in your shoes, I don't think they really understand. And it's all about perception. It's all about
Mm,
perception. But yeah,
yeah,
no, I was offered counselling. That was absolutely fantastic, but it was limited, understandably. And I had to go to occupational health because they wanted me to go to a face-to-face one with a doctor. But the first one
right.
that the company did was with a mental health practitioner, and it was brilliant. I was on the phone for about 45 minutes, and she was really, really good, and it was a very detailed report. But that's not what the organisation wanted. They wanted me to see a doctor. Um, and I wasn't able to drive. I wasn't able to go anywhere other than my parents or
Mm,
to the yoga studio because I didn't feel safe. I wasn't in that frame of mind. So driving to a doctor's place on my own, I had to take my dad. My dad's 85 and it was in the middle of the winter. But off we went and we sat in this doctor's room and I was called in and I came out 5 minutes later. And my dad goes,
wow.
and I went, well, yeah. He says, but you've only been gone 5 minutes. I was asked 3 questions. Am I ready to
Mm,
go to work? What is it that I would need to go back to work successfully? I can't remember that was it. So I don't know what or how much was paid for that occupational health report, but it wasn't worth the paper it was written on.
mm. 'Cause you need practical ideas, don't you? You need somebody who says, like, "Have you tried this, or have you done that, or have you done the other?" You
My
can't.
GP was brilliant. My GP
Yeah.
and the counsellor I had were brilliant. And of course, I found the yoga studio, and they were brilliant. They are brilliant. But as for the colleagues at work, bar one or two, nah. As I said, actions speak louder than words. But
You just want that one person to recognise it,
yeah,
don't you? That would be lovely, wouldn't it? Yeah. It's so tough. I think I'd love to know whether it's got any better, 'cause, I mean, I kinda if I remember right back to when I first started and thinking about that trust element that I had a really bad experience. And I don't know whether I mean, you can tell me, Jen, whether this was something that I was naive or whether I was just young in my headship. I'd gone, and this links to the poinsettia moment that people keep telling me about, which is lovely, that people can relate to my poinsettia moment. When I first started as a head, I was seconded into a school. So the school didn't want me. The teachers didn't want me because they wanted to do it on their own. They didn't need a head teacher. They just would like to have bumped one of the teachers up. So I wasn't wanted at all. And it was being procured by the local authority, my secondment into this school, doubly across. And I was not in a faith school at the time. Well, I was in a faith school, but not the faith that they wanted me to go into. So I was a bit of a black sheep and always have been through my career, I think. And what happened was they'd sent me on this course, and I'd gone to this course, a local authority course, and I was sitting in this course, sitting by trusted colleagues. I was sitting by trusted colleagues. What I didn't realise was behind me was somebody who was earwigging on my conversation, but I didn't know. So this person had sat behind me on this course and was listening to the conversation. You know how conversations go when you turn up on a course and you have a conversation with somebody and they go, "Oh, Jacqui, you've been sent into so-and-so school. How's it going?" And you're like, "Oh no, you'll never believe what I found out." You have those conversations. You would not believe it. I've got this to sort out and this has happened and you'll never and this. And, I've got so many that I've got to take down, whatever competency. And, you do have that. So you will not share the full story, but you need to offload, don't you? Well, unbeknownst to me, said person was sitting behind me. It gets better, Jane. He then knew that I lived in the area that the course was being run, because they were saying to me, "Are you going back to school after?" And this course had gone on to like 4, and I'm like, it's like 50 minutes to get to the school. I'm not going back. I'm going to go home and work from home for the rest of the afternoon and evening. So he knew that I wasn't going back to school. He then hot-footed back to the school and relayed my conversation to the whole teaching. Now, this
Oh,
went on. Yeah. Sorry, say that again.
that's so unprofessional.
Yeah. You can imagine what I got.
Oh,
I didn't realise with the old poinsettia and everything, because I've been sent in at, I think, end of October. So the poinsettia incident was Christmas. And then it was one trusted colleague who came up to me and said, "You do realise every time you go to that course, so-and-so is sitting behind you and feeding the staff everything you're saying." I was
oh, yes.
absolutely livid. So I thought that I was going to a trusted environment with
Safe space.
trusted people. And also I thought the local authority had provided this trusted environment, but they hadn't, because they hadn't made it explicit that anything that you say in that environment is confidential and it stays in this room. And I know as I went through my career, more and more situations you went into, courses and things like that, they would say, "This is a trusted environment. Nothing goes out of these 4 walls." But I really picked up from that one a massive load of, and it took me a long time to trust a group again. And I was so conscious about sharing things in meetings and things like that about my school. Now, whether going back to where I started, whether that was a rookie mistake, but I would
No,
question when
thank you.
everybody would think what I'm saying to the people that I trust next to me is not going to get back to my teachers or my school from somebody who's sitting behind me. You wouldn't believe it, would you?
No, you wouldn't. But the pennies just dropped, because I remember going to a course with you and you went, "I'm not sitting at the front." And I kept saying,
I
"Can I
always used to sit at the back now.
sit in
Yeah.
the back?" And I now know why you only sit at the back.
I like to be able to see who's around me because of that incident. I never go and sit at the front now. Always always get there early and go and sit at the back.
But that's just appalling. But I think that's another thing. I don't think it's naivety. I think we tend to believe that people will act in the same way that we do and behave in the same way that we do. And actually, that's not always the case. I think that's not always the case.
But when you meet your tribe, and we create environments where we network now with other people. It is the most powerful thing to network. It's when you get somebody like Jane. When we used to work together, we would bounce ideas off each other. And I never forget that time when I was really burnt out and I turned up to a meeting and you just looked at me and went, "I'll go and get you a can of Coke." because I must have looked like absolute death. I was just so burnt out with it all that just that little act of kindness from somebody that recognized you're a human being as well as a leader and you deserve to have some sort of support in this. Now, I know I went through and I had chairs of governors who were very good when I ran a single school. They were brilliant. When I was doing just one school, the chairs of governors that I had then, they're absolutely amazing people who saw me as a human being. So you do have, but it's different to have colleagues that will look out for you and peers that will look out for you. I mean, it's lovely if you could have a team of people, and I know some people do have that where they've got this lovely work environment. Unfortunately, for me, it never really, I don't know, perhaps that's a reflection on me, but I never really got it all of the time because the nature of the job is you have to hold people to account. So,
It's
it's
blurring of
never going to be there, is it?
no, you can't. It's a blurring of the lines. Shame. I can't believe that, Jacqui. Can't believe that.
Well, I was thinking back about my poinsettia moment and I was thinking, how did that actually come about? And then I realized I remembered how it came about. So we're going back, 2005 this is. So we're 20 years ago when this happened. Is it a different place now? I don't know.
It is, because I think there are some people that will follow that tactic to further their own
Well,
career.
it was. I mean, the next part of the story was because obviously they didn't want me as the head. They wanted this person as the head. But the way that they went about this meant that actually you wouldn't put them in a position of leadership if this is how they behave. So, yeah,
A
it
lack
didn't
of
happen.
morals.
Didn't happen.
Lack of morals.
It is, and it's not something that I think it's because you don't think it's gonna happen. You don't think on the same level as I wouldn't even think about that. "Oh, I'll go and sit next to that person because they're so and so, and I'll go and" I mean, sometimes I've plonked myself to learn from people, but I wouldn't outwardly go and sit next to somebody to learn to use it against that
Sabotage.
person.
Sabotage.
Yeah, it's very strange behavior, isn't it? Perhaps that's I don't know whether I'm unique in that situation. I'd like to think I am, but you never know. The listeners might say, no, no.
Say
Because we
them.
get that quite a lot, don't we, Jen? Yeah, I can really relate to that one. And I'm absolutely gobsmacked when I hear that people have had very similar experiences in this and that's still going on. So you never know. You never know. Anyway, what do you both wish you'd known earlier about support networks? What do you think, Jane? What do you wish you'd known?
I think I've known and fully embraced that being ahead doesn't mean being on your own and isolated. Because I spent so many years managing when I could have been connecting, if that makes sense. And I think it's that whole sort of what we've just been talking about really is that trust. I find it very hard to trust people, which makes that connection quite difficult. And I think that's probably because of experience, really, or experiences that has impacted on that. And that's still something I struggle with. But I think, it's making those authentic connections is really key. And I think the one, and I'll say, and I keep saying it, is I was so lucky to have you as my mentor. I can remember I remember ringing you and being in absolute floods of tears in the toilet in the school. And you're saying, wipe your face, wash your face, go get your car keys, go get in your car, drive round the corner and ring me then. Don't let anyone
Mm,
see you cry.
mm.
And it was
Because
simple.
then they know that they've got at you.
That's it. That's exactly what you said. And I did. Yeah. What about yourself, Jacqui?
I think I was so lucky that I had somebody who it was actually a TA that came up to me and said, you do realize what's going on here. And that every time you go off site, this person comes onto site and relays everything that you're saying. And it was a TA. And I think you can find your tribe with anybody, but you have to have that trust. And the fact that she'd stuck her neck out to tell me that meant I could trust her. She was somebody that I could really relate to and have a conversation with. And also that litmus test, how do you feel that's gone down? That person who's got eyes and ears everywhere. There's always one, isn't there, in a school?
Yes.
There's always somebody that yeah, they're going to have your back. You need people to have your back because it's such a tough job and you are at the top and you have to make those decisions, but it doesn't have to be somebody who's above you. It could be somebody that you're leading that's part of your team that you wouldn't even believe it. You wouldn't even believe it. So yeah, I think that's what I took away from that in a very early stage. I mean, I loved going and listening to people from industry and people like the F1 team who said, talk to you about the fact that you're a team and everybody has to play their part in order for the F1 team to run really well. Even the person that looks after the garage and sweeps the floor, because if they don't sweep the floor, the tires might have whatever on them and then they won't win the race. So I used to think, yeah, where is my F1 team? What do I need to have in place? And so I always went through my leadership thinking that everybody has to play their part. It doesn't matter what it is that they're doing, that they have to play their part, and looking at everybody as an equal part of that team, whatever role that they were doing within the school. But obviously, you still have that somebody has to make those decisions to make that end accountability. But I think for me, it's knowing and trying to create a team that work together in harmony, but it doesn't always work, does it?
No, it doesn't. It's funny you just say about that. It doesn't matter who you trust. In my first headship, there was site manager, fabulous site manager, absolutely fabulous, salt of the earth, such a hard worker, such a humble person. And when I first arrived, just kept referring to me as Mrs. So and so, Mrs. So, and I was like, No, 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 no. We're working together as a team. It's Jane. Call me Jane. If you
Mm,
call me Jane, I'm not answering it because this is." And it was that. It was sort of. It was like it maybe it might have been culturally, but it was like, okay, okay. And I went, no, 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 no. It's Jane. We're equals. We're all here to do the same tip. And it must have taken him about 12 months to get over that. But it made me realize, well, how had he been treated before? And when I used to listen to how the staff would speak, it made me really cross. Actually, he's phenomenal. He's still there. He's an absolutely phenomenal site manager, but so humble and gentle and gracious and will do anything for anybody. And I was just yeah, I do trust him. He's it's thing, and if they would come to you, I knew if he came to me, I knew it was something that was really serious, and I had to take it
yeah,
seriously because he didn't do that very often. But you're right, it is. It's finding your tribe and it's finding that trust, and it can be with anybody. Be with anybody.
yeah,
Okay, so if you're a leader and you're listening and you're feeling like you're carrying it all, it isn't failure. It is a sign for you to find your tribe, find your circle. It's really important. It will help you keep not just your head above water, but actually help you thrive. Okay, ask the head. So we've had a listener's question in, Jacqui. So
okay.
here we go. So I'm a female assistant head. I'm often the emotional anchor for others, but I don't really have that for myself. Where do I start?
Well, that's an interesting one, isn't it? I mean, it doesn't have to be somebody in education, does it? Because it's so common for women who are listeners, they're fixers and I remember, I don't know if you remember when you were a teacher, you used to get that person who came into your classroom and would stand and talk and they'd have to offload and you think, I've
Oh,
got this to do. I need to mark my books. I need to do all these sorts of things. And that person would just come in and offload. And I think you carry that through. And I think a lot of my leadership time was listening, actively listening to people coming after school and saying X, Y, and Z. And you never really that leads onto your workload, isn't it? And I think that's why we encourage people to occasionally take some time out for their strategic thinking, because otherwise they do get into the fix it person and the listening person, don't they? But where would they start? I think you've got to start with who do you trust is a massive thing, isn't it? You've got to trust people, but it's going out and finding people. And often when you first became a head, you're all in the same boat. Hopefully you get some sort of induction with the local authority or your diocese or whoever, and you can meet like-minded people, because you know when you sit in a room for with a group of heads who it is that you're going to get on with and that you know that you can trust, because just from conversations, I know we've talked about us being poles, Jane, but you and I have always got on very well because we've had that trust right from the start. And we didn't know each other from Adam, really, did we, before we met? So you do gravitate towards the people you can trust, don't you? You do have that, but finding those from a very early time, either it's through courses or it's through other people or going. I mean, used to do a lot of just ringing people up and saying, can I come have a look at your school? Usually when they got great Ofsteds, I'd phone them up and I'd say, oh, well done, congratulations on your now can I come a magpie? And you get to like-minded people who are inspiration, who are very similar in their outlook on what they want for education. And then similarly, you find those people who you just, no way, absolutely no way. I mean, it doesn't have to be similar personalities. It can be like us two, which are complete poles. So it is finding that person, but you're only going to get that if you go out of your school and you find that common ground and that group. And usually they are on your induction, aren't they? But you deserve the support. So, hopefully this podcast gives you that. But sometimes as group professionals, as WhatsApp messages can be great. Facebook, I mean, I was with a new head and he's saying, he's on a Facebook group that people pose questions, and that's non-confrontational, isn't it? You can just find that neutral ground for it. So we've got another one then, Jane. This one's for you. So this is, I'm a male head. I find it hard to open up. It's just not how I was raised, but I know I need to connect more. Any advice?
Ooh, okay. I think that's something that, okay. I think I'd start with neutral ground, not a therapy session. I think just start with initial conversation with somebody that they trust. So, how are you finding this term? What's your hardest day been lately? Maybe ask, and see. People tend to respond with honesty when you ask those types of questions. I think it's probably find a neutral ground where you can just ask somebody those questions yourself, and then hopefully they'll repeat them back to you and you will be able to answer that. But I think the key is don't wait for a crisis. You need to start building your circle, your tribe now before the pressure hits, because when the pressure hits, you're not going to be in the mind space. It's, like you write yourself an action plan or a school, your school development plan or your list of jobs to do. Put on your list of jobs actually trying to network or reach out to a colleague, and it doesn't have to be somebody in education. So my best friend is not in education. She's very high up in the industry that she works in, and she's brilliant sounding board. And I just drop her a WhatsApp or those funny memes or something, and she'll just say, or I'll just say, can we meet up this weekend? Can we meet for a drink, or do you want to come over for something to eat? And then we both know actually we've got something, and we literally just come. And for the first hour, both our husbands just sit there because we're just offloading to one another as the drinks are flowing and things. But it's really helpful to have that. It's somebody that's not judging me. It's somebody that knows me, but it's also somebody that doesn't shy away from telling me exactly what I need to hear. She's
Yeah.
not nasty with it. It's just, I'm very black and white. She's very black and white. And it works. And we are very different. We are very different personalities, very different people, but we've got a history there, and I trust her. I absolutely trust her implicitly, and she's never steered me wrong. So,
I mean, people you can trust, don't you? Because you just know. Yeah. I think you get a feeling for whether you can or not.
and we don't live in
Definitely.
each other's pockets.
No.
We meet up, say, 3 times a year, 3, 4 times a year. But it's like when we do meet up, it's like, well, we've only seen other yesterday or the day before. And it's that true friendship. So it doesn't have to be somebody in the education sector. It's just somebody that you can trust and know that you are going to get an honest response. And I think that's what you need. But you need those people. You do need people. You need your team behind you.
I think a lot of people pay for coaching. But I think this is like your day to day. You don't want to be waiting for the
Next
coaching session. And those are things for a strategic long-term thing. I don't know. People might have different ideas about how they use their coaching, but this is something that you need on the ground, isn't it? something that you need to keep you going in those really dark days. You might have that really good relationship with your team around you. But you see, a lot of the small schools that I worked in, the senior leadership team was me. That was it. You don't have that massive amount of team to turn to. So, right, cross-sector insights. What can education learn from other industries about support networks, Jane? What do you think?
There's loads out there. I mean, the private sector, there's loads, from business, you've got peer networks that show that structured peer conversations improve that decision making and well-being. And leaders have said that they feel less alone and more equipped and heard. So you've got peer networks. I know that in Warwickshire where I worked, we worked in consortiums, and within the consortium that I was in, we worked as a triad, a group of three, and those heads we rotated around. That was such a powerful group, and it was a lovely group of heads to work with because that trust was there, because it was very clearly set out what that network was for, and there was a set of criteria that were followed, and that was really useful. So if you can find something like that, or if it isn't something like that, what's stopping you from setting it up? What's stopping people from actually sort of creating that own peer network? Be a bit brave. What about you, Jacqui?
Well, I think the healthcare system have got quite a lot of reflective supervision standard in practice, especially in high risk emotional roles. I know things like when you what I mean, this is terrible. When you watch Ambulance and things like that, they're going through some really horrific times, and the medical profession go through some really tricky times, and that must take its toll. There seems to be, I might be wrong because I'm not in it, to be a bit more, how are you? How are you getting on? We've talked about, some of the things that you see in education that really challenge you. Um, and sometimes you don't realize how it affects you until you are on burnout. Actually, all these things are, the books on the bookshelf all stacking up, and then at some point they're going to fall off. But I think we can learn from different professions in the way that they put it in standards practice. We're not there yet. I think we're still in the understanding of actually the leader has to be the person at the front that is
Fixer.
fixing it all, and has to have that accountability. And actually, no, there needs to be more around support for these people. I mean, I know there's I know a lot of local authorities put in peer-to-peer work as well, but they're diminishing, so their support isn't there. So what more can we do in order to set it up ourselves? Does it need a certain person driving that to put their more workload, or does it need somebody who just says, actually, I need more support? Can we just get together for a coffee?
Well, I know you picked up on reflective supervision. That is mandatory in the health sector and in the police or the public services, but it's not mandatory in education. And I think
No.
the way that safeguarding cases is becoming so complex, it is absolutely vital that our DSLs and our leaders have a safe space, a psychologically safe space for them to discuss openly complex cases that have affected them, because where else are we going to be able to discuss that? And I know, I ran that in the trust that I worked in, and it did have a really positive impact. But as I say, that is quite rare. And it's something I think education is starting to catch up, but I think we need to do a lot more. We need to stop thinking that support is a luxury, but actually it's part of a leadership tool.
Yeah, for you to survive. Yeah, definitely. Definitely.
Okay, moment of mindfulness. Okay, so it's time for reflection this week. And let's face it, how many of us take the time to actually reflect and check in with ourselves, to reflect on the work that we carry out in our schools, how our teachers are performing, how the children are performing, all of this. But how many of you actually put into your diary time to actually reflect on you and check in with yourself? So I'm going to post 2 questions for you to ask yourself without any judgment. So when you've got a bit of time, I want you to ask yourself, who sees the real me? So who sees the real me? And the second question I want you to reflect on is, who tells me when I'm not okay? Who tells me when I'm not okay? And I think those are 2 questions that are really important that you ask yourself. And if a name pops up who sees the real me. That's your tribe. That's one member of your tribe. And who is it that tells you when you're not okay? That's another person who's part of your tribe. And it's those people. And that's one way to actually start building the tribe and building that circle of support. So those two questions: who sees the real me and who tells me when I'm not okay? Okay, I don't normally do this, but I'm going to give a shout out today to one of the remarkable ladies I've had the honour and privilege of getting to know over the last few months, and who has helped me gain a better work-life balance. And she's still teaching me to take time to stop and reflect and check in with my own inner emotions and take time out of the rat race and check in with myself. And that lady's called Becky Andrews. She's one of my yoga teachers. And whilst I was away on holiday, I was having a bit of a panic because I'm thinking I'm not going to be able to make her yoga class. And I really find her classes so calming and grounding. And here I'm getting into my woo woo, which I can imagine my children rolling their eyebrows and everything. And she said to me, don't worry, Jane. If you ever saw me in a yoga class, I'm the one that is constantly wobbling like a weeble all over the place. But if you're interested, please look up Becky Andrews at the Inner Sanctuary on YouTube and give it a go. So Jacqui's going to pop that into the notes, but please do give that a try if you want to. Okay, so the takeaway that we want all leaders to leave with is strong leaders aren't the ones who never need help. They're the ones who know where to find it.
Okay, whether you're a deputy holding everyone else up, the new head trying to prove to yourself or to others, or experienced CEO who's expected to have it all sorted, you need good people that you trust around you.
And you're allowed to want more than survival. You're allowed to thrive.
So thank you everyone for listening. If this episode struck a chord, send it to a colleague. Follow us on Spotify or Apple Podcast.
And we really do love hearing from you and sharing your thoughts. So please send us your anonymous questions or tag us in, if you found your tribe.
Leadership is hard, but you don't have to do it alone. We're with you, reaching out, setting boundaries, and breathe. Here are some resources you might want to keep close. Vocational support helpline is 08000 562 561. There's a Heads Up network. There's also DFE School Leader Wellbeing Charter and Supervision for School Leaders, SFSL.
If this episode helped, please share it with a colleague and follow us for more conversations about what it really means to be the head. Thank you for joining us on Being the Head, the human cost of leading schools. We see you, we stand with you, and we'll see you next time.